key milestone that could reshape the trucking industry. At least 10 companies are known to be developing driverless technology for trucks, most expected to pull the driver or go fully autonomous on public roads later this year or as soon as 2026. That is not far off. We've discussed the cars and the taxis on this show, and we've all emphasized that we would be very scared to get stuck in one and what could potentially go wrong. A truck is a bigger vehicle. I'll start with you, David, from a investment perspective. I mean, do we have to get on board with this because this is where it's all going?
Well, a couple things to understand. One is that pretty much everything in life shows up on a truck like that. And so we've got a big need. It's hard to find drivers. They've got limits on how far they can go, how long they can go, et cetera. So if you got autonomous, you're taking away some jobs. So I don't love that idea, but I do like the idea that maybe there's something that can go in a more efficient way. But, I just say it this way, I got a $100 chauffeur recently for my Model X Tesla, and it does a pretty good job.
But what if you can't make a huge truck like that stop and it hits something or obstructions, if there's a technological failure of some sort? That seems scary to me, just of a vehicle that size. I'm just lobbing that one.
I guess I have more faith in the technology. I've seen, I think, how Waymo operates in San Francisco with the hills and lots of one-way streets. I hear you, this is a bigger size, heavier vehicle. But I think the technology is there, and I think we're close. David, you mentioned an interesting point. So my immediately thought was jobs, the trucking, worker, what freight union, is out there that's going to fight back about this. And then I thought about my dad who runs a bus company. He's desperate for drivers. He cannot get enough drivers. There is no one willing to drive. And if that solves that problem, instead of turning down a trip, if you can take that trip because you finally don't need the driver, that actually might solve some problems. So maybe this is a double-edged sword. And yes, you may lose some jobs, but if we're struggling to find people who will drive, this actually might be a good solution.
It is interesting, you mentioned sort of the industry groups. So the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, so they represent the drivers. One of the points they make is these trucks that are driverless are very lightly regulated. But if you want to drive, an over-the-road truck, the regulations are really significant around how you get licensed, how you're checked up on, when you have to take breaks, what happens if you violate that, how you log all of that. So one of the things that's maybe going to have to get figured out through this, because I think this truck is coming and it's going to keep going. But one of the things is, how do you create a little more parity in terms of regulation? So for guys who want to continue to operate, or companies who want to continue to employ people in their trucks, how do you create a regulatory environment that creates more parity? Because these guys are saying right now, the driverless trucks have a huge regulatory advantage.
Yes. Driver-free doesn't sound so bad when you compare it to driver sleepy.
True.
Or driver dozing.
True.
Which is a problem in the trucking industry. This is kind of a side note, but on the docket next week in the House of Representatives, it just makes me deeply happy. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who handles the floor schedule, there are 5 Congressional Review Act resolutions on the docket for next week. So, and this is a repeal of certain things that are happening in California. Resolution 87 is trying to stop California's efforts to force truck manufacturers to sell zero-emission trucks. Very exciting, because they were trying to force the entire trucking industry into electric vehicles, which was going to be a disaster in every imaginable way.
And it goes back to what we were talking about. Thank you, Gavin Newsom.